Hey, what's going on? Luke here, and we're here to do a preview and give my tips for round 8 of the 2021 NRL season. Now, there's a lot of controversy going into this round. A lot of people, a lot of big names being dropped, a lot of new inclusion in the side. So let's go ahead and let's preview these games and let's give my tips. So the first game of the round sees the Canberra Raiders taking on the South Sydney Rabbitohs. Now, last week the Raiders haven't been good. In fact, the last couple of weeks the Raiders have been pretty poor. Obviously, a big lead for them. They end up getting run down. The Rabbitohs, on the other hand, were the team that ended up running down a side. The Titans had a huge lead. The Rabbitohs came back, ended up winning the game. And that's kind of 2 weeks in a row that they've done it. They did it against the Tigers. They've also did it against the Titans now. So we know that when the Rabbitohs are facing adversity, they can't come back from it, and they might have to do it this round. I think the Raiders are always going to be a hard team to beat in Canberra, no matter what their form is at the time. A lot of the times when they're playing away from home, they're not exactly that great. And they're playing the Cowboys away from home. So it is kind of surprising that they end up losing, but at the same time, Cowboys in Townsville, they're hard to beat as well. Kind of similar to the Raiders at Canberra. But for me, the biggest talking point in this game is obviously Josh Papalii being dropped. I know he's been rested, but he's been dropped. He's clearly been dropped. Last couple of weeks, he hasn't been great. They dropped him to the bench. Ricky Stewart came out and said they need to find the old Josh Papalii. Pretty much just savaged him in the media, and then he's been dropped. So it's not a good look. It's a new look side for the Raiders in general. No Jared Croker there. I look at that side for the Raiders, and it doesn't look very impressive, to be honest. Going into the season, I was expecting them to sort of be in amongst the premiership contenders, but week after week, they sort of seem to be getting weaker and weaker, not only on paper, but also just in how they're playing as well. Whereas the Rabbitohs are getting stronger and stronger. Despite having to come back and win, they're still winning, and that's the main thing, and I think they'll win once again. I don't know if it will be a blowout. I think it might be a close one because I think the Raiders will be really up for it. Being a game against the Rabbitohs, I think a lot of teams are going to be up for those games. And obviously the Rabbitohs are still missing Latrell Mitchell. Cody Walker's at fullback, was pretty good last week, but is he going to be able to replicate it 2 weeks in a row? I don't know, because fullback's not his position. So we'll see how they go. But I'm going to pick the Rabbitohs. I'm going to pick them to win 1-12, I think. Now on a Friday night, we have the Melbourne Storm hosting the Cronulla-Sutherland Sharks. I think it's going to be a good game in the sense that the Sharks just got totally embarrassed last week. Lost to the Bulldogs. You don't want to lose to the Bulldogs. It's kind of similar to you don't want to lose to the Broncos. You just don't want to lose to those sides. It's a total embarrassment. But we did get to see Shaun Johnson back. It was another week back for him, and he actually did look pretty good last week. But yeah, I think they'll be fired up going into this game because of how embarrassed they were. Whereas the Storm, on the other hand, they've just been good. They're just really, really good. They're a really good side. They took on the Warriors. Obviously, got a few lucky calls in the sense that the shoulder charge happened, or not the shoulder charge, the head clash, I should say, but the sin binning happened. So they got lucky in that sense, but I think they would have won it anyways. But yeah, the Melbourne Storm in Melbourne, completely different side. I think Pappenhausen's still out, so Nico Hines will be there. And he's been doing a pretty good job, but he definitely isn't Pappenhausen. But, he's still doing a fairly decent job for him. And they still got the rest of the core side there. Harry Grant's still coming back, still finding his feet. So I can see this either going one of two ways. I can see the Storm putting like 50 on them, or I can see the Sharks really giving it to them. Because I guess this is kind of a rivalry game, despite there not being a lot of the former players there. There's no Cameron Smith there, no Cooper Cronk, no Billy Slater, no Paul Gallen Lewis, all those sort of players. But they did play a grand final against each other in sort of recent history, I guess. I mean, it was 2016, it's still a little while ago, but I feel like there is a little bit of rivalry there. And obviously not as much as what it used to be, but it's still a little bit there. So I expect a pretty fiery game, but I think the Storm are going to win this one well and truly. I think it's going to be 13 plus. Just before I move on from that game though, I will say an interesting element to this game is the fact that Will Chambers is playing his first game for the Sharks, which also just happens to come up against his former club, the Melbourne Storm. So I think that'll be an interesting watch. But yeah, we'll see how he goes. I don't think he'll go that great. Didn't really end his career that great at the Storm, so I don't really know what the Sharks are expecting from him. Now into the second game of Friday night, probably the better game of the two. It's the Brisbane Broncos taking on the Gold Coast Titans. Now, like I said, I think this is a better game of Friday night. This is a big traditional rivalry game. I say traditional, it's not like as if the side's been around for a long time, but I was talking about the Sharks and Storm having a bit of a rivalry. The Titans and Broncos definitely have a rivalry. Now obviously, they've got a story that's written already. The Broncos up against Titans, Gold Coast up against Brisbane. But also you're adding David Fifita, leaving the Broncos last year, moving to the Titans, and he's just gone from strength to strength. He's been so good for the Titans. And I've got to say, he's probably one of the players who, if he fires, they win. I know they didn't win last week, but he scored a hat-trick last week. And look, if he really fires up against the Broncos, I think he can single-handedly beat the Broncos. I think he's that good of a player. He could actually just single-handedly destroy him. And I know the Broncos have made a lot of changes in the halves in particular. They've brought in Anthony Milford. They've also brought in Tyson Gamble. I don't understand how that's going to work. I feel like Kevin Wilder's already thrown in the towel. We're gonna lose, but we're not going to be playing Tom Dearden and Brady Croft. Well, he just sucks, so we're not going to play him. I think that's pretty much what it feels like to me, because Tom Dearden's obviously signed with the Cowboys, so they've gone, can't pick him, and Croft, well, he's not very good either. So new halves combo, and Anthony Milford's come back in. I haven't exactly heard him killing it in reserve grade. I think he played all right last week against one of the bottom ranked sides in reserve grade. But apart from that, I don't think he's done that well. I don't know. I don't know what to do with the Broncos. I don't know what you do if you Kevin Walters either. They don't really have a lot to work with, to be honest, in terms of talent at the moment. They've got a lot of youngsters, but it's not really doing much on the field. So coming against this Titans side, it could be anything. Broncos could come out fired up because they tend to do that at Suncorp. Tends to be a completely different Broncos side with the crowd behind them. However, coming up against the Gold Coast, you think they're going to be a lot of Gold Coast supporters there. So is that going to cancel it out? I don't know, but I think your smart money is on the Titans to win this one, 13+. I feel like when the Broncos lose, they lose big. It doesn't tend to be too close. And I know they were close against Penrith a couple weeks ago, but for the most part, it's usually a blowout if they lose. So I'm going to go Titans 13+. Now moving on to Super Saturday. This is the match of the round, in my opinion, is the Penrith Panthers taking on the Manly-Warringah Sea Eagles. Now, this is to Tom Trbojevic, Manly-Warringah Sea Eagles, a totally different side. Two absolute hidings they've given teams in the last couple of weeks. Now, obviously, Titans weren't that great. The Tigers weren't that great. But considering how they started the season, just the total contrast with how they were compared to how they're playing now, it's night and day. It really is. Now, I did a video a couple of weeks ago before Trbojevic was back, and I was like, Manly could possibly be the worst team in the comp. Despite the ladder positions and all that, I think they were the worst team in the comp. And then Trbojevic has come into the side. He's lifted all the confidence. Him himself has just been outstanding. And he's really taken them from being probably the worst team in the comp to now being a top 8 side, maybe even a top 4 side. And I said that a lot last couple of weeks, the fact that with him in the side, they suddenly become a team that could win a premiership. This is the real test for them. They're coming up against Penrith. We know Penrith are they're absolutely flying at the moment. There's no other way to put it. They are just killing it. In the same breath, though, I feel like with every win, obviously getting close to another loss, and I know that's the most cliched little saying there is in rugby league, but I feel like in this case, it's true. They haven't lost in a long time in terms of regular season matches, and maybe this is the week that it happens. Maybe it does, maybe it doesn't. Personally, I don't think it will be. I think they'll end up winning, and I feel like the last couple of weeks they've been coasting because they know that they can beat these sides. They know they can beat Broncos. They can do it in their sleep, and they tried to do it in their sleep, and they nearly got embarrassed, but they didn't. And the Knights, they weren't exactly a huge threat. Although the Knights played one of the best games of the season, they still lost, and that says a lot about Penrith, and I feel like they're not really getting out of third or fourth gear. So if they need to, and they might need to against Manly, I think they can put the foot down and they can absolutely belt Manly. However, it's hard to say because I keep writing off Manly and then all of a sudden they come back and win. But this one, I'm going to have to go with Penrith. I'm going to have to go them 1-12. I think it will be a close game, and I think Trbojevic will keep Manly in the game, as well as all the other ones, your Cherry Evans and such. But I think at the end of the day, it's home game for Penrith, and I think that might get them home. I'm going to go Penrith 1-12. Now into the second game of Super Saturday. It's the Canterbury-Bankstown Bulldogs taking on the Parramatta Eels. Now the Bulldogs go into this game favourite. Okay, they don't, but they got to win last week. Parramatta obviously got to win last week against the Broncos. Does that even count? Does that even count these days? I'm saying that as a Bulldogs fan, knowing that the Bulldogs lost to the Broncos, but Parramatta, it's only a win against the Broncos. Broncos are pretty terrible. And I think Parramatta, despite the scoreline, weren't that great. Like, they were good. They were good enough to win, obviously, by a lot. But there was still a lot of things that they could improve on. Same with the Bulldogs, though. The Bulldogs got out to an 18-point lead. They let the Sharks come back. And the Sharks aren't exactly a terrible side. They're not one of the better sides. And I know they've got a lot of coaching problems and such. But I think any win against the Sharks is a good one. Because you know you're going to get a tough game against the Sharks. And they've proven that throughout this year. Which is why it was more surprising the fact that they had their coach sacked. But the Bulldogs picked up their first victory of the season. Maybe that's a confidence shot they needed. Maybe this whole thing isn't like a skill-based thing or whatever. It was just the Bulldogs had no confidence and they finally got that. Who knows? This could completely kill the confidence too. I can totally see the Eels coming out and putting 30 or 40 on them. Wouldn't be the first team this season, and wouldn't be the first team. The Eels have done it too as well. So I definitely can see the Eels absolutely putting a hiding on the Bulldogs, but at the same time, I feel like these clashes, no matter how the Bulldogs have been playing at, or even the Eels to that point, but you throw out the form of these teams because there is a bit of a rivalry there, and generally is a pretty good game and not too high scoring. I feel like this one will be high scoring, but just in general, I feel like the scorelines aren't too big in terms of there being an absolute flogging. In saying that, though, I don't think the Bulldogs are going to win this one. I'm going to be tipping the Eels. I'm going to be picking them 13+ because I feel like they will run away with it in the end. But my heart says the Bulldogs have a chance here. I don't know if I'm crazy, probably am, but I'm just hoping the Bulldogs play half decent. Now moving on to the last game of Super Saturday, it's the Newcastle Knights taking on the Sydney Roosters. Now I think this one has the potential to be match of the round as well. I already talked about Penrith and Manly being a really good game, and that's one because we look at the lineups on paper and we say, yep, these are two top sides. This could be a really good game. This one, I just look at both of the sides, and it's nothing to do with, like, you know, the teams on paper or whatever. Well, actually, I guess it kind of does, but it's not like we've got 1 versus 2 or anything like that, 2 form teams of the comp. It's just the fact that both of these sides have some really good youngsters, have a fairly solid side without being a total elite side, and I think this is going to be a really, really good clash. James Tedesco, I expect to be out for the Roosters, despite being named, so we might see Joseph Suaalii debut. I really don't know if Tedesco will play. He got hit pretty hard last week, and the Roosters, they still got the job done against the Dragons. Anzac Day clash, it's always going to be a tough clash, regardless of how the Dragons are going at the time. I know they obviously didn't play very well, and the Roosters ran away with it, despite all of their injuries and such, but the Roosters, they just keep winning. They keep getting the job done. More injuries happen. They bring in more players. But each week, you keep having Drew Hutchison and Sam Walker just getting a little bit more confidence. Adding Sam Verrills there. And this Rooster side, all of a sudden, they were a write-off for 2021. Now, all of a sudden, they're starting to become a little bit of a threat again. Now, obviously, not as good as if Luke Keary was there. But at the same time, still a very, very formidable side. And obviously, they're winning. They keep winning. And the real question is, do I expect them to win this week? The answer is, I don't really know. I'm just going to have to talk about the Knights to try and come up with a decision here. But the Knights, they obviously played very, very well against Penrith. Didn't get the job done, but I thought Kurt Meehan was good. Callum Ponga's starting to find his feet. The forward pack we already know is good, but we're waiting for them to just match it with the best. And that's exactly what they did last week. They really matched it with Penrith for a large part of the game. Obviously, they ended up running away with it in the end, the last couple of minutes. But the Knights really in that game. In saying that though, I feel like Panthers, they weren't playing at their best, and they don't really need to at this point. They can still play like a 7 out of 10 and still win, and that's all they need to do to beat the Knights. I think the Roosters will actually be playing really good in this one. I think they'll go up against the Knights, the Knights home crowd, get them all fired up, get both teams fired up essentially, and I think it'll be a really good clash. I think the Roosters will end up getting the victory. I think it'll be 1-12. I think it will be a tight one. I just think Sam Walker and the halves and just Tedesco, Suaalii, whoever plays, I think there'll just be a little bit too much class for him, just a little bit too much finesse for him. But at the same time, if the Knights end up coming and winning this one, I wouldn't be surprised as well. This is a very tough one to pick, which sounds weird going into the season. You go Roosters up against the Knights. Roosters will absolutely flog them, but at this point in the season, that's just the reality of the situation. So I'm picking the Roosters, but I don't really have any confidence in it. Now moving on to Sunday afternoon football, so New Zealand Warriors hosting the North Queensland Cowboys. I say hosting, they're not really hosting, they're obviously not playing at home, but it is a home game for the Warriors, and that's more important, not so much for them, but I think for the Cowboys. Cowboys don't generally play too well away from home, despite them playing pretty well for the last couple of weeks, getting a couple of wins. They've had Jake Granville having a great impact off the bench. Scotty Drinkwater's been playing really well. Valentine Holmes looks like he's finally finding his feet in the NRL again. It's such a strange dynamic for the Cowboys because they have a lot of big name players, but they're just not playing to their ability. Yet the last couple of weeks they've actually been playing half decent and they've been getting the wins. Then Jason Tamalalo has been named to play. If he plays, they could be anything. The Cowboys, they haven't played with him really this season, and they've been winning without him as well. So that is a dangerous aspect to them. And it seems they finally bought into Todd Payton. They got rid of Josh Maguire, and on paper that seems like a bad move, but yeah, it's been an absolute masterstroke for him. I don't know if Josh Maguire is just bad for a locker room. He probably is, us Broncos fans, but just the Cowboys, they've got rid of the players that they needed to get rid of, and then obviously they made some signings for next year, so your Drinkwaters and such, they're off contract and they've got to play really well to try and secure a contract elsewhere, so they're going to be playing to the best of their ability. And to be honest, I actually do rate their chances against the Warriors. Warriors, they're good, but they're not great. They can be great, but a lot of the times they're sort of great one week, not so great the next week. Reece Walsh named at 5'8". Don't know if that's a good move. Obviously, last week he played fullback, and he actually played pretty well. Tuvatushek on the wing. I think they're kind of just trying to fit him into the side after bringing him across. I think he's good enough to be in the side. Whether he's good enough to be at 5'8", I don't really know, but Nick Arima's there. I think Nick Arima can steer the ship. I think they can do a good enough job there. This is similar to the game I just talked about. This one could go either way. I don't really know which way it's going to go, but it could go either way. If you told me Cowboys win, not surprised. If you told me Warriors win, I'm not surprised. For me, I'm just going to go with the Cowboys. I think they've shown enough the last couple of weeks, adding Tamalalo, and I think they'll be too strong for him. I think the Warriors definitely push him, and I think they'll play quite well. I expect Reece Walsh to actually have a pretty good game at 5'8", but I think there'll just be a little bit too much class from the big names for the Cowboys. So that's all it comes down to, but once again, I have no confidence in this one. Now we move on to the last game of the round. It's the St. George Illawarra Dragons taking on the West Tigers. This one is just a spoon bowl. It's not really a spoon bowl, but they're two sides who are absolutely playing atrocious at the moment. The Dragons started off so strong, and they kind of fell away like I expected them to. Actually, that's a lie. I was expecting it to last a little bit longer. Actually, probably way longer, but some of the selections that Griffin's making at the moment, Jack Bird playing at 5'8" and such, it is a very Anthony Griffin thing to do. However, Ben Hunt is back this week, and I think that's a huge inclusion for them. And I think all of a sudden we'll see the Dragons go from being sort of back down to the bottom four, and I think he'll bring them up. I think he'll make them rise up, and he'll give them that confidence again. I think that's what the Dragons have been lacking. Just a little bit of confidence the last couple of weeks, and I think Ben Hunt, he'll be huge for them. The Tigers, I just don't know what's happening with the Tigers, to be honest. There's a lot of talk about Michael Maguire. Even just, you look at their lineup, it doesn't look great, but at the same time, they pushed the Rabbitohs, but they also got smashed by the Cowboys, and last week they obviously didn't get the win. It's just, they're such a weird side where one week you look at them and you go, showing potential, and then the next week you're like, yeah, they're probably going to win the wooden spoon. And I can't get a read on the Tigers, and I don't think anybody can get a read on the Tigers. And if you're a Tigers fan, I'll be so frustrated looking at this side. And even the Tigers fans that I've talked to, they are very frustrated. At the same time, though, if there's any other side that can relate to you, it's the Dragons. Like I said, they're obviously a team that when they're playing half decent, they can compete with the best, but it's just a matter of keeping them at that consistency, and they just don't have it at the moment. However, I think the Dragons, I think they can get the job done against the Tigers. Once again, this is 3 in a row. I don't really have any confidence in saying the Dragons are going to win this one because the Tigers are so unpredictable. We know if the Tigers come out and have a pretty decent start, I think they could put the sword into the Dragons, but I feel like the Dragons are just going to have enough to grind it out, get the victory. I think it will be 13 plus too. I think Zach Lomax, I think he'll have a pretty good game. Just the Tigers' backs, I feel like for me, they're just not up to first grade standard. Apart from Dane Laurie and Nofaluma, I think the rest of them are just, I don't know. I think they'll have a tough ask trying to, stop Zach Lomax, Jack Bird. Any of them, I think they can score a couple of tries. So I will go with the Dragons 13 plus, but once again, no confidence. Anyways, those are my predictions. Leave in the comment section below. What are your thoughts on round 8? What are your predictions? Is there any that you think I've got completely wrong? Just let me know in the comment section below. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and give this video a like if you happen to enjoy it. Also, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Also, make sure you turn on the notification bell. It's super important in terms of you actually seeing the videos. But those sub boxes aren't the best. So go ahead, use that little bell, and then you'll get a notification on your phone. Also, while you're at it, go ahead and give me a follow on social media. It's on the screen right now. It's Mr. Luke YT. For the most part, it's just on the screen right now. It's Mr. Luke. Copy that. Facebook is just Mr. Luke, but everything else is Mr. Luke YT. So go ahead, give me a follow, give me a like, do all that sort of stuff. And stay tuned for more content on the channel. Plenty of stuff to talk about. NRL's always got some controversy. So if there's controversy happening, I'll be talking about it. So stay tuned for more on the channel. And that's where I'm going to end this one. So thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time. See yous.